fish are friends, not food.
I'm a little worried about Rob.
Yes, it's happening.
Ever since we tried to summon Cthulhu, he hasn't been the same.
I'm growing gills. My transformation into a deep one has finally begun.
Rob, we don't see any gills.
It's these kids getting involved with all this stuff causes them to go crazy.
I think I feel the webbing starting to grow between my fingers.
Welcome to Dinner and a Board Game, a new actual play show about friends, good food, and lots of fun at the gaming table. We're your hosts, Megan and Heath. Each night, I'll invite the gaming group over to my house to cook dinner, sample drinks, and play a board game on one of our customized board game boards. Dinner and a Board Game is an actual play show where you'll be able to watch the game from start to finish, with gameplay dashboards and graphics that help track the turns and allow everyone to follow the game's action. We'll play games like Zombicide, Black Plague, Descent, Journeys in the Dark, Small World, Unearthed, and Terraforming Mars. We'll even be joined by special guests such as Lou Anders, J.F. Lewis, and cosmic horror artist David LaRocca. The show is free to watch on YouTube. Just come by my channel, Heath Robinson, and be sure to subscribe. Click Watch Now to start the first episode and join us for fun-filled evenings of dinner and a board game. And now it's time for General Geekdom, the roundtable show about movies, games, books, and other things going on in the fantasy and sci-fi genres, as well as all the geekverse. Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I believe, episode 6 this is, of General Geekdom, where we are going to be talking about horror and storytelling again. So this is going to be our round 2, because at the end of our last conversation on horror and storytelling, we didn't think we were done. We think there were still more things to say. So I thought we would jump right in. And, we may be joined by Brennan. We've got a storm up in Birmingham, and his internet and Wi-Fi is out. And so maybe he will be able to jump in if he gets that back.
Let's see.
All right. Well, Megan and then Dax and then Rachel, do you want to introduce yourselves and let everybody know who you are and
Yes,
what's up?
I am Megan Pecco. I am a costumer and an actor. I'm just finishing up a run of Cinderella here that's got about 32 performances. So we're tired, but all done that, and I'm looking forward to the next projects. And I do dinner and board game with Heath.
She's the co-host?
Costumer for cultists and stuff.
And she's plays the police officer in season 2 that's coming.
I get to tackle Peter.
That was a great scene.
A great pastime.
Loved it.
All right, Dax?
Yeah, I'm Dax. If you watch the channel, you know that I play Rob in The Cultists. And I do production assistant work when I can. Do lots of crew jobs, even background acting from time to time. It's just fun being in the film world. Yeah.
All right, Rachel?
Well, if you're new or joining us, I play Shay in The Cultists, and much like Megan, literally minutes ago, just wrapped up striking the set for Anatomy of Grey, which is playing at BFT. They are celebrating their 50th year for this upcoming season, so check them out. They're going to be doing some really cool, 24-hour play festival stuff, and it's definitely worth looking into. But other than that, I'm usually just an editor for Hoffman Media and drop in here from time to time and geek out.
Well, all right. Well, let's go on to horror and storytelling then. So Dax and Rachel are our two horror experts. So Rachel, you had a list of different potential subtopics to talk about. And so I'll let you lead off with you might have your list with you, but here's one of them. I'll let you lead off the discussion with it.
Okay.
You had brought up a point about body horror and transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
often
body horror.
Yeah.
Oh,
Parallels
go ahead.
with puberty,
Sorry.
sickness and cancer. Sorry. So often. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. You'll see. I think that horror is, and I think this can kind of lead into something we've also been wanting to talk about this episode, is that horror can be a really great vehicle, especially like in fiction and storytelling, for trying to process some more difficult elements of life and society and culture, et cetera, et cetera. But specifically with body horror, which honestly, like, I kind of took a little while to come around to, but when I finally did, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. It feels like transformation horror is just such a great way of like tackling deeper topics in storytelling. Like we kind of touched on werewolves, specifically ginger snaps last time, about how that's just like, wow, puberty is just a jerk, isn't it? And at the same time, though, I think that like a really, really good example of that is The Fly is just such a classic horror movie, but it's also really just a couple dealing with death and even with something really malignant that is spreading through this person's body and breaking it down, and how they navigate that. And that can be such a complicated thing to go through, sickness like that. And I think it tackles it really well. And those were kind of the things I was thinking about when I was submitting that. So I was like, yeah, body horror is just, it's very cathartic, because you're taking something that you're so accustomed to, like your own body, and it's weaponized against you.
Can I just say, you really make me want to rewatch The Fly now. Both versions, both the Jeff Goldblum 80s version and the lesser known 1958 movie with Vincent Price.
I think that was, sorry. Sometimes it's like, I wish we were all in the same room together. It's like we accidentally interrupted. Yeah, and at the time, Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis were a couple. They were still together at that point. So they have these really powerful scenes together, and it has to be somewhat of a challenge as a couple to be like, wow, what if I lost you?
Yeah, the thing about that movie is that the special effects are so good. If you haven't seen the movie recently, or, I only saw it once. Maybe if I saw it a bunch of times, I would remember more. But all I can remember from The Fly are those special effects, like just the decay and the rotting. I've never seen a movie more gross. And the thing is, I've seen a lot of gory movies too. Now, I'm not a gore person. That's not my specialty. But like, those movies haven't even shown me anything as gross as like Jeff Goldblum just turning into a fly. Yeah.
I can't say much because I don't know a lot of horror, but I'm excited to hear the conversation. I'm only new to watching some of it because I was a scaredy cat.
Well, I was going to say, even with Cinderella, though, you've got transformation in that. It's just so prevalent in storytelling, having these physicalized like thresholds that people move past.
Well, I was thinking about this in terms of the body horror subtopic when I was trying to think about this. Megan, I thought about something we talked about in the very first episode, which was that episode of The Next Generation where Geordi is transforming into that creature. And how both you and I thought that was an extremely creepy episode. I had been told,
it traumatized me.
Yeah, I know, it was traumatizing to me as well. And I had actually been told not to watch the one with Armus, which is the one where Tasha Yar gets killed. Not to do that, like in the evenings or whatever, something like that. But that one didn't bother me as a kid. But then I watched, that one with Geordi where he's transforming. And so you have this idea of, and I was trying to think about then why was it so terrifying? We do have the body transformation element of this, and we have the idea of this loss of self.
Yeah.
Maybe that was...
Which is terrifying. I mean, on my side with like chronic illness and stuff, it can be very terrifying to lose your ability to hello, I have a visitor, sorry.
Hello.
Oh. Dropping off timesheets. Sorry. Love you.
But to lose your self or your ability to function?
Yeah, it's really terrifying. I've had some experiences with seizure-like things. We haven't figured out exactly, but not being able to control your body is horrifying.
Yeah. Well, I always think about like Jekyll and Hyde too. Like that's a very transformative story. And at the time, there was this big push of just like, no, you have to repress your urges. You have to repress these inherent primal carnal pieces of yourself. And Stevenson was just like, let's break that down. And it's been a story ever since. There's just like, even, gosh, there was that black and, I want to say it was like black and white, or just when it was like turning the corner on color, where I wish I could remember the year, but there's this Jekyll and Hyde that is just so.
Oh yeah, they came out with so many Jekyll and Hyde movies.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's
going back to the 20s.
Yeah. But yeah, like even Jekyll and Hyde is just kind of like that. Just, you know, there are characters around, because like the book itself, like Henry Jekyll is very isolated with some mentions of characters, but like over the years you've seen, you know, introductions of characters like Lucy and other characters that are foils to how these transformations affect the people around you and blow back on the people that are around you. And I feel like there have been so many people that have just been in the playground of Jekyll and Hyde in terms of like transformative horror that have just been like, how does this affect everybody else? Changes everyone else as much as it changes them.
What about the movie Annihilation? Because you brought up specifically dealing with cancer here, and I love the movie Annihilation.
That was a good movie.
And a lot of people have said that a lot of it is allegorical for cancer.
Can you tell me what that movie is about? I haven't seen it.
Well, have you read The Color Out of Space by Lovecraft?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well,
speaking of transformation body horror.
Well, yeah, I know. I guess that could be it too. I thought of Annihilation being kind of like a retelling of The Color Out of Space, because there's this place it's near the coast, but this meteor has crashed and now it's emanating this bizarre energy, and there's what they call the shimmer that's like shielding around it. And, you know, they'll send in military teams and then they just won't come back. And of course they can't communicate with what's inside. And so eventually Natalie Portman leads the a team inside.
Isaacs.
Oh yeah, Oscar Isaacs is in it. Yeah, he sure is. Yeah.
Because we saw that in theaters, didn't we?
Oh yeah. I liked it so much that you and Carol came and saw it. Yeah.
The bear. Oh my gosh.
So
like
the bear in that movie could be the thing today that is most traumatizing that I've ever seen on screen.
Really?
Yeah, that bear was.
Is it a real bear? Like what is it?
It was decomposing almost.
Yeah, I don't know how it was actually done, but it was like a decomposing undead bear with like the lives and minds of other people imprinted on it, and the sounds that it made was.
If it mauled and killed you, it would like also just absorb your soul. And so anytime there's a member of the team, and if you haven't seen this movie yet, and you are a spoiler person, like heads up spoilers, but there's a member of the team who goes down in that movie to the bear. And at one point this bear shows up again, and it's this very awesome, like kind of like Aliens callback, or Aliens 3 callback, of a character having to stay perfectly still to not attract or draw aggro from this bear. And anytime the bear opens its mouth to roar, she hears the screams of her teammate like come out through the roar. So it's roaring, and then you hear like under it, and it was just like, oh no. So you have like this transformation horror where not only is you're gone and something else has assimilated you.
That makes me think of like I mean, just on the like vocal thing, the one of the things that messed with me in the Hunger Games was the birds that would like what was it? I can't remember what they were called.
10
But
years
they would,
since I saw the Hunger Games. Oh man. It's been 10 years since I saw the Hunger Games. That's unreal.
but they had, I think it's in Catching Fire that there's birds that can like repeat, and they would hear or learn like families tortured cries, and then like repeat it out to the players in the games, and it was scary.
I'm kind of like a Hunger Games by proxy person. Were those Mockingjays?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that too. I just
remember
we're not
it
doing that. We're not doing
It's
that.
been a little while.
Well, and you bringing up Annihilation also makes me think about The Thing, where there's that almost like parlor room mystery of who.
That was something.
It's one of the best
that showed
whodunit
me
movies
in the
ever.
last
Am I
few
wrong?
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing. It's incredible, the 80s. The 80s was this time where they were remaking so many 50s horror movies and making them better. Like, I don't know. You don't see that today, you know? You don't see remakes being better than the originals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think now. I'm just
and you know,
Well,
it's I haven't watched The Thing since just a very long time. And when I watched it, I don't think I appreciated symbolism. Is there like a theme to it that you guys can think of?
Paranoia.
Yeah, I mean, just not knowing who's.
You know, I just thought of this. Since the original is from the 50s was kind of this McCarthyist Cold War era. It probably was about that. It was probably like the fear of who's the communist in the room, that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay.
I watched this one last night, and this one really doesn't have, it's not an element of transformation, but I would say that it deals with being disfigured. I mean, it does deal with being disfigured and also being psychologically damaged with this, because Batman Returns and the Penguin, and I had not seen that movie in probably since I saw it in the theaters a long time ago. And I've seen the one with the Joker. I love the one with the Joker, the original Batman. But then for some reason, I had never watched that one again because I was too young to understand. But because that ended up being a dark movie. I watched it again.
I saw interviews. I saw interviews from the 90s where parents were concerned about the movie because I think at the time it was rated PG. Can you check this? Google the rating of Batman Returns.
Yeah, I'll say while he's doing that, one of the reasons I had such an aversion to body horror was when, and I'm probably going to tell my age a little bit here, was when the first Batman came out. I was a kid and my parents were like, she likes Batman. We watch the Adam West thing all the time. Let's take her to Batman. And the whole scene, the whole like acid bath scene wrecked me. Like, and my parents will still tell this story if the appropriate amount of family members that I can be embarrassed around are in the room. They will tell the story of how I just tore out of that theater screaming. Like, I was horrified. I was like 5 or 6 or something like that. And I was like, nope. Because if you're like, if you cut your teeth on like Batman, especially the Adam West Batman, you're just like, oh, boom, pow, this is going to be great. You don't expect an acid bath. And that kept me away from body horror for so long because it was just, it was
in his hand.
About it.
Yeah, the hand.
Remember the hand coming out of the acid bath? I remember that being pretty creepy to me too. That really got me as well. I didn't see that in the theater. I saw it later, and yeah, it's still bothered.
But PG didn't mean what it used. Like,
well, it does say PG-13. I looked it up.
Okay,
it does say
PG-13.
it was PG-13.
I was about to say the ratings for things definitely have changed because you could get away with a lot more.
The point still stands that a PG or even a PG-13 movie in the 80s or 90s was much more darker. There was a lot more you could do with that than today.
Well, now this may not be true, but I might be able to look it up. But I heard that at one time there was no PG-13. That you had PG movies, and then so that's why sometimes when you get a PG movie,
I got sucked into that movie on accident.
It can be one thing, and you saw it again, and then later PG-13 came in to try to bridge that gap between what's PG and what's R.
Well, we were even talking about today backstage. We were talking about the Don Bluth cartoons, which are not inherently horror films. But then you have things like Dog Hell and All Dogs Go to Heaven, and then you have the Owl and Nicodemus in in Nim, and just the cats in American Tail, and they're terrifying. They're absolutely terrifying. Don Bluth was like, "How can I traumatize kids and burn off some steam from all of my time at Disney in the most effective way possible?" He found a way.
Yeah.
Well,
he broke away from Disney, and in doing that, he knew that he should do things that you couldn't get away with at Walt Disney Pictures.
Oh, yeah.
the
Because I think Anastasia too, the original one with Rasputin and stuff. I don't remember. It's been a while since I watched that one, but I do remember being creeped out by that one as well. And some of his he wasn't put together right, and
Right. Well, and that's just like Christopher Lloyd, like continuing like that storied career of just like being so creepy and so scary. Because even in like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, his whole character, nightmares, absolute nightmares for the longest time.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the Batman Returns things, because I did see that one in the theaters. For some reason, Robert and Susan took me to see that for some reason. But what I was expecting to be going and seeing was something like Adam West. And and I was watching that again too, and that's what got me saying, I should watch Batman Returns again. And I appreciate that movie now and the iconic depictions of the Penguin and the Catwoman. But I completely understand that anybody who's taking kids, it's a Batman movie, which is why I think that movie didn't do as well,
I think they had
because
McDonald's
he doubled down on it.
Yeah, that Watership Down syndrome.
And there was a problem with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was the same with Watership Down. My parents were like, it's a cartoon about rabbits. She'll be fine.
Oh my God. My parents let me watch Adult Swim when I was 5 or 6. Because to them, Adult Swim was it was cartoons. It's on Cartoon Network, so it's for kids, right? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to see a lot of horror producers and creators right now going back to that medium of like animation. Like there's hardcore, mea culpa, forgiveness asked for. I meant to watch it before I came on today, but you have Mad God that's out right now, and that is a claymation horror.
We haven't seen one of those in a while.
Yeah, and it's apparently been doing quite well, and it looks amazing. So it's really cool to see just like how many different ways can you be terrifying.
I want to touch on that because claymation is sort of a form of animation. It's not done on drawing, but it's done with clay.
Yeah, I mean,
animation. There are animations that try to market themselves as horror. I can't think of any right now, but I know it's been done before. And I'm just wondering.
The Nightmare Before Christmas.
That's not a horror movie.
Man.
Okay.
I was going to say, back in the day, though, there were like so many. It was weird when that came out. I'm with you on Heath. I'm with you on that, Heath, because I remember my parents wouldn't take me to see it.
Yeah,
I don't think I was okay after that.
That one creeped me out. Now it's like one of my favorite things ever. But
I was going to say, it seems really hard to do horror, at least to make it scary in animation. And I wonder if it's because you need like live action to feel real to you. I don't know.
I don't know, because let me say, one of the most scarring things as a child was Courage the Cowardly Dog to me. That I couldn't watch it because I
watched it. Yeah,
some episodes, and I mean, there's one with some kind of evil rat and the old lady, and I swear I never went back. I was so terrified.
There's that one that looks at you and it says, "You're not perfect." You know that one?
Yeah, I was terrified by that one, and that is just
memories.
Normal cartoon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Kept me up at night.
Goosebumps. Hey, I just thought of Goosebumps. That is such a gateway horror thing.
That was my thing. Those books.
Yeah.
Now the Mummy one.
Those books.
I just think, Goosebumps is this thing that really can help a person transition to the scarier stuff, because there's a couple of those episodes. I'm thinking of the Haunted Mask, the mask that when you put it on, it doesn't come off. Totally wrecked me.
I only ever read the books, but I was obsessed with them. And it's funny because I really hated anything scary growing up, but I was very much into Goosebumps.
Yeah, no, Goosebumps was great. And they were, I think at their heart, there's also, with the, we start on transformation about processing things like puberty and sickness and whatnot, but also in some horror, there's these elements of like a morality play at the heart of some of them. And Goosebumps was very much like an Aesop's fable of like contemporary horror for kids. But they were still just, even the books were just like, oh, this is really scary. And if you're neurodivergent like me, it was really great just kind of like stimming into like the raised bumps of the Goosebumps title on the cover.
Oh yeah,
got nervous while you're reading it.
Yeah. I think I still have a lot of my books actually somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I have 30 of them. The first 30.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes,
I remember when those were just so popular. I didn't get into them. I didn't read them, but I remember them being everywhere.
I remember being
Yeah.
really young. I mean, I was in elementary school, and I remember picking some of them up at my preschool during the summers. Like I would go back for summer camp things, and I would read them.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure they're still being written, but I'm not sure if they're still written by R.L. Stine. You know?
No, I don't know. I didn't know
But
they were still being written.
That guy was prolific. I know that he wrote at least 100 Goosebumps.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
There's so many.
Minimum 100. Yeah.
Even there was one that I remember. I have vivid memories of reading this one in a crystal, like eating the little crystal burgers, and it was like a choose your own adventure Goosebumps.
I read that one
They
too.
made
It was
those.
frustrating.
Give yourself Goosebumps was the name of
Blue
it.
or
Yeah.
Cardinal,
Yes.
something. It had that. Yeah, I remember reading that. Like I couldn't even put it down. I had to bring it to Crystal with me.
Yeah. Put your thumb on the page. Be like, no,
I
I take
think
my thumb
I
off. Doesn't
had
count.
the straw paper as a bookmark for a while from that trip.
I loved. We could do a whole podcast on just choose your own adventure books and game books. There's like a genre of I guess you'd call them RPGs, but you play them by just flipping through the book, and you can do your own stats.
Turn to page 20 if you choose to, go down.
Black Mirror actually did a whole episode.
Yeah,
based on game
Jabberwock,
books.
I think. Yeah.
It's called Bandersnatch. That's
Oh,
what it's
Bandersnatch.
called.
Right.
Yeah. I really love game books. That's a whole other podcast.
We should talk about that, especially when the role playing and stuff like that. I'm going to make a note of that over here. The game books. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I own a couple. They're fun. Oh my gosh. Speaking of Goosebumps, I haven't seen the Jack Black Goosebumps from like 2016. Did either of you catch that?
He did do that. I didn't catch that. I meant to, and then it just went. There's just, I don't want, like, not to sidebar too much. There's so much media right now.
Yeah,
and so like I'm going to
oversaturated
watch
for
that,
sure.
and then it's like, zoom.
It's too
I
much.
brought it up because I don't want to be the guy who just hates everything new and assumes that that's inferior. But I got the impression from the trailer that it just didn't have the same vibe. It just had, it wasn't cooking with the same stuff as the Goosebumps that I grew up with.
The Goosebumps sauce.
Yeah. It's what I'm trying to say is it seems like we talked about how in the 80s and 90s you could get away with more to scare kids. And I got the impression with this new Goosebumps, they were less willing to scare the kids. I don't know.
Can we talk about Scooby-Doo with that? Has that been
Okay.
Oh yeah. Talk about that. I got a story about you and Scooby Doo.
I love the idea of like, the actual bad guys are the people we know in life. Like,
I was gonna say the real monsters are just normal, terrible people.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah,
if only it was a werewolf. I would know what to do with that.
There were still
I
a couple
saw-
episodes of that one that freaked me out too long term.
I saw recent news. I forget the name of the director. There's a director right now who put out in the news that they would like to make an R-rated Goosebumps movie, and I'm fully behind it. What do you think?
I was gonna say if Fear Street is an indicator, they would be fine at doing that because Fear Street was dope. And that was, the spinoff of his more like young adult series. And it was great. Like, honestly, I went into it kind of going like, we'll check it out. This should be fun. I liked Fear Street growing up. Let's see what we got here. There's like a whole scene where like this girl gets put through like a bread slicer in a deli. And it's one of the coolest sequences I've seen that year. I was like, that was incredible.
I might have missed it.
It was gross. And then like the blood went across the cakes in the bakery. I was like, come on, this is great.
I remember from the 90s a Fear Street kids show. Are you saying that they rebooted it and made it for adults?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Netflix did like a 3-part series, and it was
the 3-part. I saw the commercial for that.
It was good. It was solid. I was like,
It was
okay, cool. This will be, I guess, this will be spooky. No, they used some pretty old school horror elements and sequences and ways of filming. There was lots of like specifically that cake scene. Like it was, or the bread slicer scene reminded me a lot of some Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequence tricks and editing, where you don't necessarily see everything, but you see enough. Where you're just like, yep, my imagination can fill in the gaps here just fine. It was good. It was solid. I was really impressed by it, and I went in being like, "This is a cash grab. This stinks. This is gonna suck." And I was like, "Nope, this is good. I like it."
I remember being in the kitchen with you, Megan, when you were really young, and your dad, and there was some kind of movie that you wanted to watch, and you're like, "Can I watch this?" And he said, "No, it's scary." And you said, "But I watched Scooby-Doo, and it's scary." And your dad went, "Yeah, that's my point." And you were like, "Huh? What?"
Do you remember what the movie was, Megan?
I don't. I remember him telling me that story. Like, I've heard that story before. I was young. I don't remember that. But I was such a scaredy cat, even up to the age of like 12, 13, when my mom started introducing me to Doctor Who. She would only show me some episodes because she knew I wouldn't sleep at night, like the Vashta Narada Silence in the Library episode. I mean, that one like freaked me out in the long term.
It's funny. It's funny that you bring up Doctor Who, because there's so many moments on that show where they just incorporate horror so beautifully. Midnight is my favorite. I watch Midnight.
The Angels. Yeah.
The Angels, the Silence. Midnight is one of my favorite episodes. There's also one with Capaldi. Later.
Is it Heaven Sent?
No, it's not Hide. It was the one, and it wasn't supposed to be, I think, scary by the end, and that's why I think Doctor Who does really well. A lot of the times you'll be like kind of freaked out, but by the end it kind of like ties it up in a way that you're not
hidden horror.
They kind of explain it, but this was something under a sheet on the bed that rose up, and I was like, "Nah, I'm out.
I'm out."
And I was older at that point, but I do remember my mom censoring some episodes early on of like Tenet and stuff that I got to see later. But at the time, she was like, "You're not going to sleep."
It's funny that you bring up like the stuff you see when you're kids, like because I'm glad I have the context of seeing like the Batman movie and the acid bath freaking me out when I was a kid. A couple of years later, my sister's babysitting me, and she's wanting to watch Nightmare on Elm Street, and I want to say it was the 3rd or 4th one. I don't remember which one, but I was like insistent. I was like, I want to watch this, and I was apparently a kid in a candy shop, and my mom was like, "You showed her Freddy Krueger? Oh my God, she's gonna have nightmares. We already had a headache after Batman. How could you do that?" No, that was it. That was the gateway for me. Like after that, I was just like, "Let's go."
It's funny. It seems like everybody has
brings you
a
into
story. Everybody has a story of something they weren't ready for as a kid. They watched something on the TV they were totally not ready for, and as long as it's not. You see, you can, as a little kid, watch something that nobody is ready for, that even an adult would be shocked by. And that creates trauma. That's like something that will be a traumatizing thing with you. But if it's something that just a kid is not ready for, that can be something that you look back at and laugh and say, "Oh my gosh, remember that?"
That's Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow is one of my favorite movies. And that was when me and my mom watch it every single year to this day. It's our tradition. But I do remember, I think the first 2 times I watched it, although I enjoyed it, but I would like close my eyes and stuff. But for the first 2 times, I like completely blocked it. And we came back to it the next year, and I was like, I'm going to be honest, my little brain just threw it out the window. So I wasn't going to be scared. And then the older I got, the more I appreciated it and stuff. And now I love it. But the first time I was like, I don't even remember it. Like my brain was like, this is too much for me.
It's amazing what we do to ourselves. Like after we see these kind of things, like, I will sit there and play scenes over in my mind, and create them in my mind. Not today, but especially as a kid. I'll sit there and think about these things. I do remember laying in bed and there was like a squirrel or a chipmunk up in the ceiling, and there were those noises going on. It was dark, and I'm laying there, I'm listening to those noises, and I'm thinking, I know what that is. There is a vampire in the corner of my room, and there is a skeleton that is hanging up on the ceiling, and that noise is that vampire plucking the skeleton's ribs. And I'm just laying there thinking about that being in the corner of my room. And then they're just like, just stop thinking about that.
That's we're just going to put that away.
Yeah, that's what I made. The squirrel in the ceiling.
The things we make up as children.
Yeah.
Okay, let's here is our next topic. Let's go to the next one here. Rachel, tackling the belief that horror is inherently misogynistic and exclusive. And you do have a note here. The final girl and a few other examples beg to differ.
Yeah, no, I think that we sort of talked about it a little bit in the last episode where I was just like, horror, I think, is one of the most inclusive genres you could ask for. You see a lot of characters that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be heroes. And it's interesting because while the 80s is very celebrated for having this big boom in very like quintessential horror, there's also, there was this big backlash where it's just like, oh, this is just an excuse to exploit women, exploit minorities, and get them naked and killed and bloody and it's just like, but usually a lot of the times at the end of these movies, like you have, like, again, I don't mean I will have other examples, but I always love the image of end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre where we have our heroine on the back of the truck just like laughing. Like, just like, I got away, screw you, blah. I mean, I'm traumatized for the rest of my life, but yeah. And, I feel like there's a very feminine energy with horror. And I feel like there's also so many opportunities for a lot of people who don't usually have representation of visibility to be in horror. Like, I also think about Dreamcatchers, Nightmare on Elm Street with the squad of just these kids that have been left behind. You have somebody who can't walk. You have a Black character. You have female characters. You have so many different representations in these movies that don't usually show up in other genres, and they are kicking Freddy Krueger's butt. And at the same time, whenever they go into their dream world, they are doing incredible things that they usually wouldn't be allowed to do. And I think that's where, some people are like, I don't really know if I want to get into horror. It just really seems like it's, I don't know, there's not a lot of this or a lot of that. It's like, no, there's something for everybody in it. And you will find yourself, no matter who you are, in horror. And even in the Chucky series, we had a wheelchair bound character at one point just wipe the floor with Freddy, or not Freddy, excuse me, Chucky. I was just talking about Freddy, Freddy. And so, yeah, I think there's sometimes a stigma around horror that, it's just like white dude versus the world. And that's just not the case. Like, sometimes they're doing that, but not
especially how popular Jordan Peele's movies have been, and the social commentary behind that. I haven't seen Nope yet. I really want to.
I know that's on my list too. I'm really excited for Nope.
Yeah,
I'm really excited for it.
I'm going to be checking out Nope, but I've also heard the critics come in and say, don't go into this thinking it's a horror movie. He's really going with a little bit more something else here. Yeah. That's what I've heard. I don't know.
Definitely, though.
Now, I was going to say, one of the weirdest stereotypes I've heard about the horror genre is that the Black guy dies first. You'll even hear Black comedians joking about that. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of horror movies. How many horror movies, Rachel, can you name where the Black guy dies first? I can name one, I think. Maybe two if you remind me of something.
There's so many examples of triumph in this question that I do struggle with it. If there is anybody watching this that is in comments that can kind of help jog our memory here, please feel free to let us know.
I'm sure if we Google it, there's somebody who's compiled a list that runs like 10 or 20 movies long. But there's hundreds of horror movies. There's probably thousands of horror movies. characters. And so I just know that I've seen enough to say that stereotype is way over exaggerated. Way.
I'm also really excited to see this very aggressive turn away from, you know, the trans character is going to kill everybody. There was like with like the New Year's, what is it, like New Year's Midnight Train or something like that. There's that movie. There's Sleepaway Camp, where you know, at the end it's like
Sleepaway Camp was something else, wasn't it?
They were like they were transgendered. It was them. They're evil, and it's like really glad that we've moved away from that because it was like don't know about that guy.
I don't even know about these.
Some Giallo movies had it too, where it was like, oh. So, but I think that's the other good thing about horror is that it's very self-aware. So that if it does kind of step outside of that realm of making sure everyone can be included, everyone can die or be a hero in horror. A horror community and filmmakers are really good at catching themselves and being like, we should probably not do that anymore. Like if we're getting this, we don't want to do that anymore.
Like, and when you talk about the survivor girls, like, you know, we have a term for some of these endearing characters, these ladies that are the last one standing in a horror movie. We call them scream queens.
Yeah, the scream queens.
These people are worshipped in the horror fandom. If you ask horror fans, like some of their favorite actors or actresses, if you open it up to everybody, somebody is going to name Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah. Somebody is going to name Neve Campbell. Somebody's going to name I can't think of the name right now. Who plays Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street?
Oh, that's I have to look it up because I was just thinking about her too.
Yeah, I love Nancy. She's probably my favorite scream queen, personally. I don't know. No.
What about in this vein? What about the new Predator movie? Isn't it called Prey?
I've only seen trailers. It looked interesting.
Isn't that about a
Heather
female Comanche
Logenkamp?
warrior?
I was like, it's Heather. It's Heather. Heather Logenkamp.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't keep going without just loving on her because
I haven't seen the trailer. I did see the short film that was the fan-made film that supposedly it was based on or something like that. Oh, okay, it's like 7 minutes on YouTube. So I watched her, this Comanche woman fighting the Predator. And then I've heard that the new movie's good, but because I was hearing about that yesterday when I had some things turned on. But
I was in the process.
Prey looks amazing.
Yeah, I was in the process earlier this year of binging all of the Alien and Predator movies. It's become quite a task at this point.
I've seen the first two now. I've seen like Aliens, so I'm
To me, I highly recommend just finishing the Alien series. Like, don't even watch the Predator stuff, and then when you're done with that, watch the Predators. Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen those. I need to rewatch both the Alien and Predator.
I really enjoyed them, I have to say, because I wasn't sure that I would. And years ago, I mean, they've been recommended to me, but I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like that. Love them.
The thing about Alien, it's a great example of what happens with a franchise when it has to last over decades. What I mean by that is, you know, the studio wants to change it up, not just because they want to tinker with it, but because the audience themselves cannot be expected to watch the same thing. So it's curious how we go
with Jurassic Park.
I disagree with that. So they kind of that's a whole topic. We can get there. But Alien, it's like this darkly lit horror movie in space, unique for its time. And then Aliens is a completely different take on it. It's like, hey, what if we did that, but instead of horror, it was action? And it's good. It's really freaking good. And then Alien 3 is like a return to horror, but it's also got this more sci-fi element to it. There's something, it's like a different type of horror. You know what I mean, Rachel? Yeah.
Or
liked the badass.
It's very you couldn't make a movie like Alien 3 today. It's a movie where all of the characters except for Sigourney Weaver are bald men, a part of this weird, unique society on this unique planet. it's so weird that they wouldn't make something like that today.
It's interesting because on paper the original concept was that it was a space monastery that she crashed into, and then they were like, we're gonna make it a prison instead. And I'm just like, you know, I think the original concept would have been really friggin' interesting.
I do too.
And it's a shame that they were like, no, people are going to want to watch space monks fight an alien. I'm like, I beg to differ.
They still
I beg to differ.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, that's why they were all bald.
Even though they changed it, it still felt kind of like that anyway.
Yeah.
And then you get to Alien Resurrections, which a lot of people just critically panned and said this is garbage. I personally think, well, what do? They returned to action because action was bigger at that time. And instead of it being like, I don't know if the term serious action is what I'm looking for, but I think of Aliens, the second movie, I think of that as like, you can be a serious critic, I guess, and still enjoy that movie. Resurrections is not that. Resurrections is like a popcorn movie, but it works for me on those terms.
Well, and that's very Whedon. Like he was starting to mess around with Firefly concepts with that movie.
Oh yeah, that's right. So Joss Whedon directed that?
Yeah. No, he wrote it. The guy who directed it did City of Lost Children and Amelie, I want to say. So yeah, we had a French director. Yeah, he did Amelie and City of Lost Children, and then Joss Whedon wrote it.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, Firefly was not far behind. So you actually can see a few glimpses of the Firefly crew in those characters.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched Firefly yet. I'm a monster, and I've got to get around to it.
See, I was thinking about rewatching some of that again too, because that has some of my favorite episodes, like just from television in it. And the problem that Rachel was talking about, there is so much out there today. There's stuff that I need to rewatch, like I've been talking about here. I need to see that, but there's all this new stuff. There's too much stuff.
So much stuff.
There's so much stuff.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say Prelude's really cool. I just really want to give some love to Robert Rodriguez's Predators because it gets so much hate, but it was such a cool concept. And in the end,
I said, why does it get hate?
I don't know. It was solid. Like you
haven't seen it. I know I've heard that before, but I've never known why.
Rodriguez is a polarizing director too. Let's remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he made the Grindhouse movies, didn't he?
He did Planet Terror, and then Quentin Tarantino did Death Proof, and Eli Roth did the Thanksgiving trailer in between. I think that Edgar Wright did one in there too. I just can't remember which one his was. No, the Grindhouse movies were fun. But yeah, Rodriguez is like, look, if you're going to see, like, Rodriguez movies are made by a guy who sold his organs to or sold himself to science to finance his films. He doesn't care what any of us think, and he never will.
That's what I like about him. Yeah, I like no fucks.
No, I liked Predators for, you had this concept of like prisoners that, if you can survive on this planet where an alien will hunt and systematically kill all of you, great, you've earned your freedom. And it had like Walton Goggins in it, and it was just it was very Rodriguez, and I think that I guess it didn't jive for most folks, but I really liked it.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it with a group of people, and they were like, that movie was awful, and I was like, I really liked it.
I didn't get to ask, what's your opinion on Alien Resurrections?
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's fine. I mean,
Okay.
it's A+ alien fan fiction, and I'm all right with it. Like it has like fan fiction energy to it, and
it does. It does.
But like in a good
Gordy
way.
Gamer with the basketball slam.
Yeah, where she just literally dunks on Ron Perlman. Yeah, I'm here for that. I'll do that every day and twice on Sunday.
Yeah,
I thought that was great. But yeah.
Okay, well, how about this? This is a topic that I came up with kind of recently when I was thinking about things that are outside of movies, though, but stories and things like that really horrified me, but also at the same time fascinated me as a kid. And this was the stories of alien abductions and Area 51.
Oh,
and I recently found out, I watched a show when I was a kid, whatever it was. I remember watching this about this alien abduction, and then also about Bob Lazar, because it had the actual Bob Lazar interviews in it. And first of all, I was horrified because it was telling the story of these people. Actually, I'll tell you what the show was, because this was been in my memory. But then about 6 or 8 months ago, I went back and I was like, what show was I watching? And I found it on YouTube, and it was the Unsolved Mysteries episode that was on alien abductions. Like, the first part was alien abductions, and the second part was Bob Lazar and Area 51. And watching that, they're retelling, like the documentary type style, but with the dramatization of what's going on. And these guys were telling the story like it was like brothers who were abducted in the middle of the night and taken on the alien spaceship, and all of a sudden they're naked, on the ship, and all this stuff happens to them. I think that was my first encounter with something like that, because I was like, wait, what can happen to you? Like, what? There's what?
Wait, what?
Like, right. And so that was why I was horrified. It was like, wait a minute, because it's that show, especially in that style, when you're watching as a kid and you're watching like a documentary or something about these people who are, it's not like just a show, it's a documentary about these people who were abducted by aliens. I'm going, I didn't even know that could happen. I didn't know that was something that was in the world. All of a sudden, Mom, you say good night, but yet we seem to have a lack of alien abduction protocols going on in the house. I mean, this could be like the most terrifying part of life here in the evenings when you say goodnight, that could happen. So that was like the first part of the show.
Because I watched Animal X was another show.
I love that show. You just triggered me.
I watched that, and they had an alien episode, and I think that was the one, because I did see a couple of those shows like you're talking about, Heath, and I learned about sleep paralysis, and that was the first time I had ever heard about it. It was somebody like, oh yeah, I had that, and I woke up and the aliens took me up, and I was like,
you what?
They did what now?
And I literally, that was like a fear for a couple years.
I had a serious
wake
fear
up
of
and they're
alien
gonna be
abductions.
around me.
Yeah. Specifically, Megan called it. It was the Animal X episode on
the
alien
Bigfoot
abductions.
episode scared me too.
Yeah, that is the episode that triggered a fear in me that lasted for quite some time.
I was like, why was I allowed to watch this? Why did I?
Why? No, and I think stories like that, like, it just kind of emphasize just like how much that's just another thing that's just so strong about like horror and storytelling, is that like if you take somebody out of a familiar element, like when you're a kid and you're tucked into bed and everything's going to be fine, and suddenly you're an alien like petri dish, like.
That's why I think I agree, Heath. Like the things that were like documentary style, that you're like, oh, this is like, or at least as a child, you're like, this can happen. This is real. Is like so different from just like scary movies that I watch. Like I wasn't Sleepy Hollow. I'm not worried about a headless horseman coming for me. Now sleep paralysis and aliens abducting me, that might be a problem then.
Yeah.
I remember, so they went from that to Area 51, and we're talking about the Roswell Crash, the Roswell Crash and everything that went on there. And I remember they were also dramatizing, like when the mortuary guy came on the base, because they were asking for child-size caskets that could be hermetically sealed because there's been an accident on the base, whatever. And the guy comes in and they run him off. Then I'm from the mortuary. And then later, one of the nurses, supposedly, wants to have like lunch with them or something like that. And of course they've got this, reenacting it. And the nurse is just horrified because she's been working on the alien bodies, when they came in, and she draws what they're supposed to look like on this napkin, for him to see at the diner or something like that. And then tears it up and burns it immediately. And like, I remember like the terrified nurse thing, but then but the thing is, I couldn't stop watching it because it was horrifying. But then it also leads to wish fulfillment, I think, because once you go from that to Bob Lazar, and you have the story of Bob Lazar, who is, what is his story? I think that maybe one of the reasons why his story resonates so much is because you're just this guy, but you're brilliant. So what does the brilliant guy always want? You're just the brilliant guy, and then all of a sudden the government agents show up and say, we need you to work on the aliens. And you get picked up and taken to Area 51, where you get to, play with all of the alien technology, spacecraft and stuff like that, and you're on the cutting edge. So there's this horrible idea about, the dead aliens or maybe the still living aliens, but yet this idea of all of this technology and the wish fulfillment that maybe that is where you want to go. And maybe, one day all they have to do is say, hey, sign these papers and you can go work at Area 51.
It's like, finally.
Time has come.
Heath, have you ever seen that movie Fire in the Sky?
No, I have not.
It's got some of the best. It's got the best footage, high production footage of an alien abduction in any media I've ever seen. It's utterly terrifying. And I rewatched it just a year ago, and I was like, "Yep, that's still messed up. I still don't like what I'm looking at."
Well, maybe I do need to. Maybe I do need to watch that. I was listening to a podcast with the guy. I believe that's the one that's based on a true story. I mean, there are several.
Yeah, it's based on a true story. Yeah.
And I was listening to the guy on a podcast, and to me, he came off as completely not credible. But maybe that was just me, because I was like, "Oh, this turned into a movie." But then I didn't go forward and watch the movie because I was like, the guy just didn't seem real credible. He actually
appeared, though. Do you remember the game show called The Moment of Truth?
No.
Oh, it was a game show where you were hooked up to a lie detector, and if you answered 21 questions with truth and you didn't lie, then you would walk away with like $500,000. He showed up on the game show, and at some point he was asked, like, "Did you have a UFO encounter?" And he passed. So he passed that question. Yeah.
Was it like a polygraph kind of?
Yeah, polygraph. Now the thing to note though is that polygraphs can be fake. Like, you can actually train yourself to pass.
I listen to a lot of true crime.
Yeah. It's not proof of
those will
anything.
not hold up in court of law.
Yeah, but it is supporting evidence, you could argue.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, yeah, I don't know what to make of a lot of those anyway.
Right.
And like I said, it's also difficult for me to sometimes separate that. Like, if I heard Bob Lazar's story today, and was evaluating it completely fresh, what would I think about it? But that's really hard to do, because I've known about Bob Lazar forever, since I was a kid, and its impact on me. It's really hard to all of a sudden say, now let me just take a completely fresh, objective look at this. Would I believe what Bob was? Well, probably not. I would probably not believe it. Although I also hear he's got some people think he does have a lot of credibility as well.
Speaking of disputed claims, the Lutz family from the Amityville house, whose accounts were the basis of the Amityville horror book and movie, they went under a polygraph and they said they weren't lying. But and they still, the surviving, I think they're both still alive. Anyway, they've stuck with their story, despite the fact that many of the things that they've claimed they go in contradiction to things that we've observed in the record. Like, they would say that it was snowy one day when a certain thing happened, when they saw hoof prints. And then we have a record of the forecast that day, and it wasn't even snowing. So, it just goes to show that disputed claims, even when you have people saying they weren't lying and passing lie detectors, you can still get a better explanation.
Well, you can also believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
Even if it, for some reason, isn't true or something.
Right. That's another thing to consider, is that the Lutzes might have been delusional. They were so... Because I think any of us, even if you don't believe in the supernatural, if you don't believe in the supernatural, you would still probably have freaky nightmares and experiences when you just moved into a house where somebody murdered people. It's just your imagination going wild.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take our brief break for our sponsorship, which is us, and then we've got more topics when we come back here in 2 moments. But first of all, so I think I should talk about, I was trying to figure out which one we should run, but I think we should run the cultists since we're all the cultists right here. So let's do the cultists for Ritual, which is the board game, which is going to be coming out after Terra Tiles. I just got approval to run the Terra Tiles terrain system on GameFound. Its new preview page is up on GameFound. They are going through it all for to actually approve the launch of it. So that's coming soon. But then after that launch, then we're going to run the Ritual social deduction game for the cultists. So here it is.
Do you want to get involved with the playtest of development of the new cultist party game? We're looking for people who want to join us right now.
Mike says community is really important.
Whether you have a gaming group ready to playtest, or if you just have an analytical mind and a knack for game rules, just click the link below and submit your name through the form.
Welcome. We have donuts. Wait, what's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
The advanced draft of the rules will be sent out soon and will include instructions for how to play with a deck of cards, some dice, and a couple of other items around the house. That means there won't be a need for endless printing and cutting in order to have a print and play prototype ready.
So do I get to cast spells? Yes. You're a wizard.
Ritual will be coming to GameFound, and you can also check out the GameFound page for more information about the game and a brief rundown on how to play. Hundreds of gamers are already following the game on GameFound, and we're excited to get it produced. So click the link below to get involved. We'll set up an online hangout where playtesters and rules reviewers can discuss the game together and make it as great as it can be. We can all let our inner cultist out together.
All right. So if you want to be one of the playtesters, click the link down below, and I will send that out. I think we've had about 1,600 people sign up to playtest that game. It would be great if we could get to 2,000 people. So, all right, that's what's going on there. And then we're going to relaunch the Cultist Season 2 in conjunction with the launch of that game on GameFound. So we're going to do a big lead up. The GameFound game, the game release, we got miniatures, and we're going to have the Cultist Season 2. We're going to do it all in one big shebang. All right. So next topic. Okay, Dax, this one was one that you brought up. You were talking about the major subgenres of horror and how they can be done at their best and how they can be done at their worst. I guess what makes a particular movie of a subgenre particularly good versus particularly bad?
Yeah, I wanted to start with slashers because for people who don't consider themselves horror fans, I think they paint all of these with a broad brush. If you don't like slashers, then you see all of them as like the same quality. And for people who do like slashers, we very much have an opinion of like, this one sucked, this one was great. So I want to start, Rachel, you like slashers, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you like in a slasher, and what are some things that you think make a slasher bad?
2 seconds.
But he's also a slasher fan, apparently.
All right, I can start.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, I think for a lot of people they would say the kills. There's certainly a significant portion of the fandom that would be like, I just want the kills to be creative. I have to say, for me personally, that's like a bonus, but not a requirement. We talked in the last time we did the horror episode. I talked about how, for me, Saw, even though it was torture porn, I wasn't really watching those movies just for the traps. I was watching it because I like putting myself in the position of fear and anxiety that these movies can put you in. And that doesn't just apply to the torture porn genre. That applies to like all of horror, is that I for some reason like putting myself in vulnerable positions with these characters. And so going back to slashers, what I think is good with them is when the killer just has an intensity to them. There are killers that they're coming and they're coming, and you don't really feel this tension. You feel like, man, if I can just get to the door, I can get out of this. But then you have a movie. I actually want to compliment David Gordon Green's new Halloween trilogy that he's made. Now, the recent one was not so good in my opinion, but one thing that it was very good at was the intensity of Michael Myers, because Michael, he doesn't even have to do anything creative with you. There's not really a particular kill in that movie that pops out in my mind.
He'll just kill you. Yeah, I say he'll just kill you.
He'll just kill you. But the thing about it is, before he even kills you, he'll grab you, and I just felt grabbed in that moment. I felt I'm stuck to the chair while Michael's about to just plunge it into me. You know?
Yeah. Slashers, I like and appreciate slashers. They're not going to be the first horror movie I go to. I will say something that makes a strong slasher is like, you know, I'll agree the kills are just like, especially when you look at everything that went into the first Jason movie. Like, that's just, those kills were just, I mean, the maestro himself was doing those. So, but like, I think the thing that makes a good slasher is setting up your kills, not necessarily mechanically, but emotionally. Like, we're very invested in, I think the more you can invest in these characters, like, it's good to have your just like, oh, this is the fodder to show just how like murked they can get at the hands of a good slasher character. But I think that the thing that also makes a really strong slasher series or a really strong slasher killer is actually caring about the characters.
Oh,
because if you connect to them and you invest in them, then you want to see them live. And then when they go, you're like, no.
That's true.
So
it's just
I think
so
that
hard to find. Yeah,
it is. I think that sometimes, like, especially like after, you know, those first few slasher movies came out, everyone was like, oh, that did really good. And they were just like, let's copy the formula and go. You know, I think that like, and you were talking about the more recent Halloween. I actually really liked it. I liked the generations. I liked the generations in that movie. And you know, that also that movie hit at a really crucial that hit like the zenith of the Me Too movement, and to have these like generations of women just put Michael away was like, this is pretty good timing. Like, this is actually, and to see
that first 2018 one, I really loved. I love it so much. I actually, I have the novelization of the 2018 movie. So that one's great.
Yeah, it was really cool to, you know, see also what happens after you survive a traumatic event like facing Michael or facing Jason or Freddy or any of that. And they did that a lot in the Freddy movies too. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like one of the things, especially nowadays, that makes a really strong slasher film is like the emotional tether that runs through it, setting up stakes, serving up steaks with A1 sauce, man. Like, you got to set the stakes. And I think that's what makes a solid slasher, is setting the stakes and having a connection to these characters. But it doesn't hurt to have the occasional like chum in the water of just like, well, that character's a stoner, so clearly we have to appease the morality corner of this movie, and they're gone. Like, it's still fun to have those traditional callbacks, but it's also really fun when those kind of flip on their ear a bit too. That's always really fun.
Yeah, like in Cabin in the Woods.
I think the thing that makes a slasher like not work is when it's just like everyone's dying for no reason, and it's just like, okay, like, this is just gross. Like, this is
yes and no. So I think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I like that movie, and yet if you were to ask me, do I care about the characters in that movie? I would say, with the exception of the protagonist, no. I don't know if you feel differently though.
Well, I mean, I just mean, it depends how you set it up. Like, I think that slasher movies, I think their strength relies on how, I guess we're gonna Lebowski this a little bit, in how the pins are set up and how you knock them down. Like, if you go into it with, we're gonna knock these pins down willy-nilly and whatever, you're gonna have a great time. I think if you go into it being like, oh, these pins are made of glass, like you're going to have a different experience. I think it just depends on how you set the pins up for a slasher film. Because it's very rare someone comes out of a slasher film, and if they do, it's usually the final girl element. So, but I don't know. It's slashers are kind of weird for me. I know what I like when I see it, but I don't necessarily seek them out.
Yeah,
and you know, it's not hating on slasher films. I just really like haunted houses. And again, it's really weird to come from a place of not liking body horror and just being like, I love it. And a few other elements, but slashers, I don't know. There's hot and cold for me with that one.
Absolutely. What's another genre we could talk about? Is there something you want to bring up of like what works and what doesn't in a subject?
Ghosts.
Ghosts.
Let's do ghosts.
The thing about ghosts, right? You know, if we've watched ghost hunting TV shows before, those can be a real waste of your time because it's just people going, whoa, did you hear that?
Oh, but I had my ghost hunting book growing up and stuff with all of my I was into that.
And so when you make a ghost movie, you have to make sure that the ghost is doing more than we expect. I think a movie like The Conjuring is a positive example of a ghost movie because the things that the poltergeist does in that is so twisted. Visually, I am visually getting a different experience from The Conjuring than I would your standard ghost movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ghost movies of the last few years, and I say few years because it was 2007 when it came out. No.
It feels.
But it was called The Orphanage.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah.
And there's this hide and seek sequence, and I think that's one of the things I really like about ghosts is especially in terms of like storytelling and whatnot, is when you're doing something normal, and like if you're baking, which is a very normal thing, and suddenly the eggs are out, even though you didn't do that, you're like, wait, like I like the preemptive, like fill in the gaps, fill in the blanks of a good ghost story where they see you and they know you. I think that a really effective thing with storytelling with ghosts is this idea of surveillance, and they've been observing you and watching you, and suddenly these little things you do fall into place because they just nudged it there. Oh, that's good stuff. And The Orphanage was I think a really good example of that with the hide and seek sequence.
By bringing up The Orphanage, you reminded me of another key element to a good ghost movie, which is have a good backstory for why the ghosts are there. You know?
Yeah, why they won't leave. Yeah.
Yeah. There's I'm tempted to spoil why the ghosts are in the orphanage because it's so different from what I've seen before. Do you think we should tell them?
I was going to say, now's the time. You have a few seconds.
I don't
care.
If you haven't watched The Cultist season 2, guess what? You've got time because we're going to be releasing it with, is this giving us enough time to lead into the spoilers so people can leave if they need to?
Yeah. Okay. So it's the children are hidden in the walls of the home. Like the dead bodies of the children are in the walls of the place. And she like opens up a little cabinet door or something and she sees these skeletons. It's a heartbreaking moment that I didn't forget. And it's stuff like that where I'm just like, whoa, I see why there's ghosts here. Sometimes it's just, I feel like the typical ghost story is that, oh, somebody died here or somebody was killed here. You know, it's rare to see like just mass bodies hiding in your home. There's something striking about that just, I don't know, it just sort of raised the stakes of the movie for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that I'm the pretty thing that lives in the walls did something similar with that, where it's really just like, ooh.
I don't like the things in houses. No.
Yeah, an old house.
Yeah, it's a safe space and it's not safe anymore.
Yeah.
These ghost movies prey on your fear of change. You know, you've moved into a new place and you don't know what to expect with your life.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. We should talk about, this is a harder one to articulate, I think, but psychological horror.
See, that's the stuff that I like.
Yeah, that's the stuff
that I can handle better.
It's the higher brow of the horror genre. And that's why it's very tough for me to even begin with what makes that work and what makes that not work. What do you guys think?
I have a very knee-jerk reaction to highbrow horror.
Yeah.
And my knee-jerk reaction is just like when you go to an amusement park and you don't like the tilt-a-whirl, but you like the drops. Go to the drops. Don't judge the tilt-a-whirl. That's how I feel about when someone's like highbrow, lowbrow, slasher, body horror. But I'm just like, it's horror. Just
all horror to me.
Yeah, it's all accessible all the time. I will say that for psychological horror, that being said, that's my favorite. Love me some psychological horror. Anything that just tickles the brain a little bit.
But
and you're just like,
have you seen a psychological horror that wasn't good to you? You didn't like it?
I wasn't a huge fan of Gothica, honestly.
Okay.
I felt like that was a very blockbuster psychological. And that being said, I didn't hate it, but I was just kind of like, this is, it felt very paint by numbers. And I think that but if you're going to sell tickets, you're going to get people in the seats. You've got to paint by numbers sometimes, but I really don't like that applied to psychological that much. It's really weird to market psychological because a lot of people just don't want to go there. And they've got enough stuff to deal with, and they've got their own things that they're either working on or avoiding or they've overcome. And I think that's where some psychological works and sometimes it doesn't, but horror is not necessarily responsible for what you're going through.
Yeah.
It'll either work or it won't. I think that psychological horror works beautifully. I think that in one of the emails I mentioned Babadook being a beautiful study of grief and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if you are in the midst of the zenith of your grief or depression, you might not want to watch that.
Yeah, you're not ready.
I like a lot of the psychological stuff in the arts, like Suspiria. I think.
Oh, Suspiria.
I actually, and I heard that some people didn't like that one, but I did.
I like the original. I haven't seen the remake yet.
The newer one with Tilda Swinton.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Okay.
It was that.
Yeah,
that's
I liked it too.
Section because I work in the arts so much, I really like the ones that have to do with that. It's an interesting little subsection.
Yeah.
I really dug Suspiria. I loved Suspiria is one of my favorite movies, period, for horror movies. Like I have like a few that just like, hey, we're gonna watch this. I'm like, great, let's watch it twice. And Suspiria is one of them. And I really liked the remake. There were a couple of moments where I was like, why are we doing that? And but for the most part, I was like, this is incredible. Like the dance scene. Oh my,
the soundtrack.
God. The dance scene with the mirror, where she's literally below her competition, and every time she makes a move, she just like contorts and her ribs pop out, and oh my God, I was like, well, that's competition in the arts right there, because she's working beneath her, like they're in two different levels, and she's doing the same amount of work that this girl is doing. But every time this girl does a motion, it hurts her. And it's just like, that's where like psychological horror is just like, I need a break. Like, I think the only time I've ever needed a break from a horror movie was The Witch. And
I like that one.
I love The Witch, but I needed a break. Like, I think we got like 2/3 of the way. And it was the part where they were like, I think they were, and spoiler alerts, if you should check out The Cultist. Hey, spoiler alerts. Here we go. It's the part where they're walling the children up in the farm. And I was like, I need a break. I need to take a break. So yeah, no, psychological horror.
It's done well so many times, but
yeah, it's hard to think of examples where it wasn't done well. And the only one I can really come back to is Gothica, because it felt very fake. It felt very like, it was still good, like in its own way. But
I wish I could comment. It's been so long since I saw it, so I don't know.
It just didn't really feel. Maybe I need to go back and watch it again. But I remember watching it at the time and just being like, "This is
right."
This is painting broad strokes of just like, oh, these people are crazy. Isn't that something we can all relate to? And I'm just like, oh no, I don't know who these people are.
I'll bring up an example: the Silent Hill movies. Now, the first one is okay. The second one is one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. And it's a shame because Silent Hill, like the gaming franchise it's based on, that is something that in the earlier installments of the series, a lot of care in the writing was made. Intense symbolism, every single monster, every single location means something to the characters. It all matters. And they tried to do that with these movies. And particularly with the second one, part of it was that they didn't respect what they were building from. So it's based off these games, but they didn't respect the source material at all. So they changed. They were like, oh, let's have Vincent and Heather be a couple. Even though in the game, Vincent is like 45 and Heather is 17. That's a little creepy. But they aged him down to be like a teenager in the film.
Well, even the first film had its own struggles because all of the like Sean Bean stuff.
Yeah,
that was all post production. That was all pickups because the original cut was submitted, and then like the producers or the studio or whatever was just like, there ain't no dudes in this movie. And
it's a reverse of Alien 3. Alien 3
it was like
all dudes but Sigourney Weaver.
They're like, we don't
all women but Sean Bean.
We don't know if this is going to attract enough people if it's all women and no men, and so they just went in. They were like Sean Bean about it. Let's Sean Bean about it. It's one of the only movies he lives through, so that's cool. Yeah. But like it's like Silent Hill has been fighting an upwards battle for a long time. That being said, that first movie was dope. And it was so cool. And like they said that literally the hardest post-production CGI thing they had to do on that was the ash, because almost everything was done in front of the camera on that one.
If we're talking special effects, I really liked it. I think I'm just harder on the movie because it does not honor the source material. But I want to articulate better to people watching, what makes psychological horror not work? Because we see so many examples of it working. I feel like the only thing I can say about Silent Hill, well, in that second movie, it's like, even though it is a psychological horror, the symbolism is so thin. Like it's a Hollywood movie at the end of the day. And so the scares in it are not scares that are psychological in nature. It's more so just that the plot is psychological. The town is supposed to play off of things in your mind, but in practice, the execution of the scares in the movie are just sight gags. It's like, oh, we dangle a scary thing in front of you. Aren't you scared? I don't know.
I've talked enough on. I have an answer to that, but I feel like I was gabble-to-gooketing all over the place. So what would you think, Heath and Megan, on that?
Well, I don't know.
I'm not a good person.
I'm going to have a hard time coming up with a bad example of a psychological horror because I don't know that I'm even that
not qualified
able to define the movies.
What would betray like a good look into like a psychological bent on a story then in that case? Like if you were reading a story where, you're supposed to have a deep dive into somebody's like intentions and reason and mentality, like what wouldn't work?
And I want them to answer your question, but just to build. Well, if you guys have something to say now, go ahead.
I don't right off the
bat. I'm trying to come up with what my best psychological movie is, and I don't even know. I'm not sure.
Okay, I just want to build here. All I think that I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
If you're going to do a psychological thriller, you shouldn't be afraid of how messy and messed up a brain can be, and a brain wants to be.
Okay, this is what I was thinking.
I think that you need to. I think that like where psychological thrillers work is leaning into what is the trigger we're breaking down here? What is the trauma we're breaking down here? What is the mentality we're breaking down here? Like, how can we deep dive into this?
That's what it's like.
And
how
I think that
to everybody off of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, like, you know, I mentioned it kind of earlier with Babadook. Like, I feel like Babadook is a really good look at grief and a really great look at depression. And it never flinches from that. That movie is messy and it's chaotic and it has its ups and it has its lows. It has very manic points and it has very low key points. Like, they have peaks and valleys in that film. And that is what depression and grief is. It's got its highs and its lows. Yeah. And it never, ever steps away from that. It's just like, no, we're going right in and we're going to stay here.
I have a thought on that, just with like looking at the human brain and stuff like that. I would say something like that doesn't work for me is, and it's ones I haven't seen and I stay away from them, but things that I feel like they're psychological horror, but things that deal with mental illness or like personality disorders and stuff like that, that will usually turn me off because they're not usually portrayed like as people, or they make it out to be like scary. Like, I think there was one, what was it, Split? I didn't see it or anything, but I stay away from stuff like that because I get nervous when people with like personality disorders and stuff are portrayed as like, oh, I have this one side that's like so bad and can turn and will kill you or something like that. I guess that counts.
Yeah. Split was, I saw Split and Split was interesting in that I love that we have a split opinion of it. Oh, I'll leave. Sorry. No. Split was really interesting because it took that concept and was just like, it fantasized it a little bit. And I think if they had anybody but James McAvoy executing that performance, it could have gone into, I think in some ways it still does go into that realm where it's like, people, you really need to read up more on bipolar disorder, schizophrenic disorder. Like, you need to read up more on this. I think that it's a really great vehicle for like, hey, you should probably, as the viewer, read up on this a bit more. But at the same time, it's kind of like, it's still a horror movie being made. And they're like, we do still have to have some fantasy to it. And it felt, the way it felt was that, like, I feel like psychological horror walks a tightrope and some people can just go like, do and go right across it. And some people like will go and then they wobble and they make it. And then there's others that's just like, no, you missed the mark.
Yeah.
And I felt like Split had wobbled from a certain point to the end, because it's solid. It's a solid horror movie. I think
I did not see it, so
I think it's a good gateway horror movie. Where like if you're like, I don't really watch horror that much, but I'm kind of interested in it, I think Split's a good one. But at the same time, I feel like there are moments where it doesn't stick the landing a little bit in terms of breaking down that psychology of somebody who has that either split personality or schizophrenia or bipolar. It's very commercialized in a couple of places.
Okay. I thought of something while you were talking about that. When somebody, there's like a trope that keeps being overused of, he was dead the whole time. Whoa. We see this in a lot of psychological horror, and sometimes it's warranted, and sometimes it feels like the studio just watched The Sixth Sense, and then they said, hey, we need to do that because it worked.
Sixth Sense was so good.
Yeah.
Oh, Sixth Sense was so good. Dang.
I
remember seeing that in theaters. Sorry.
Yeah. We're closing in on an hour and a half here, but I do have one topic that we have not, I don't think we've talked about at all. And I would kind of be interested in a breakdown of the good and bad. And then I do have a topic that we can wrap up on for a final minutes, like the whole discussion of horror. And if you're watching, hello to everybody out there who is watching. If you will hit the like, subscribe, throw us a shout out in the chat, anything like that, it would be great. But the genre that I thought of, or subgenre, was exorcism and demonic possession. I don't know that we've talked about that. So, I mean, I've seen some of those movies, but how is that done good and bad?
Well,
I
The
mean-
Exorcist to me is like the standard. That's the gold standard for how to do that genre.
Yeah. It is, and I think, yeah, I was gonna say Exorcist is one of my favorite films. Literally, like that's there were so many. I grew up in Northern Virginia, and there were so many times where our sports teams would have to run up and down the Exorcist steps, to So there's like a backyard love for that movie, but. I was gonna say I love exorcism movies so much.
The Rite, I saw that.
Oh, the Rite's fun. The Rite's fun.
And isn't there one just called Ritual or The Ritual, or was that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, The Ritual. Yeah, that was the one where all
that
the.
I'm thinking of.
No, the Ritual is the one where all the guys go into the woods to scatter their buddy's ashes.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah. That one wasn't
dope.
necessarily an exorcism one, but that was really great. I think it was Right. Yeah, the one that people were talking. Yeah,
I was gonna say, speaking of psychological horror, if you want to have a little bit of fun with like backwoods horror and like cult horror and psychological horror, The Ritual is so good. Oh my God, it's good. But I love The Exorcist. It's so perfect because like you go like 30. You do have like your starting sequence of the film where obviously something bad's going to happen in this movie. But then for like the next half hour, 40 minutes, it's just the drama of this actress living in DC who is trying to split family or being a single mother and working on a film project. And then while she's working on this film project, her daughter gets possessed about it. And it's great. And I love exorcism stories because that's, again, that whole just like, what if we broke down that we have inner demons and they need to come out and there's things that we need to deal with and they need to come out. And exorcism movies are so good at that. They're so good.
I think we're finding a pattern here as we compare different subgenres in that what will always make a movie better is if you are applying a significance to the horror that is happening to the characters. Okay? Because there's a dime a dozen. There's actually a lot of Exorcist movies where the exorcism is just happening and it's not about anything. The demonic possession doesn't mean anything. It's just a big, scary monster for you to eat your popcorn to. But when it's done right, it really is about what the characters are going through. Yeah.
I really liked there was a movie called The Last Exorcism, which was really good. And that was about like this dude who's total charlatan. He knows where to set up like, different rigs and different sound effects in different areas to be like, yes, your daughter's healed now. Isn't that great? And there's even a whole part in the movie where he was like, I could stand in front of a pulpit and recite the recipe for my grandma's banana bread and have them eating out of the palm of my hands. And he does that. But then he comes across this someone who comes to him, my daughter's possessed. I need your help. And she's legitimately possessed. And even at one point, there's a part in the movie where it's just like, your tricks won't work on me. I'm the devil. And I think that, I think it's honestly really hard to mess up an exorcism film. I think you have to try real hard because I think there are so many things inherent on either side, whether you're possessed or you're trying to help somebody who's possessed. And that possession can be drugs, alcohol, bad behavior, anything. And I think it's relatable on both sides. And so I think you have to work pretty hard to really flummox an exorcism film.
or maybe another way to put it, in my opinion, is that you have to not put in the necessary effort to just draw a significance to what is happening to these characters. Because I definitely have seen, horror movies that you find on Netflix or streaming services where, like I said, the demon stuff is just happening and it doesn't really mean anything. So my advice to filmmakers who do want to make an exorcism movie would be, make this significant to what's happening in their lives. Make this represent something.
Well, I think what Rachel was talking about with all different kinds of things you could be actually representing thematically through a demonic possession is really interesting.
Yeah.
What your message could be. Well, let's end with this topic. I think draws both of our conversations together, the two different shows here, because I've learned a lot. Because, like I said before, I would have started all this, I would have said that I was not a horror fan, and there's certainly different genres that I don't watch. But it seems like there's a lot of stuff that I do watch that falls under this umbrella of horror, and I've really enjoyed talking about that. But we briefly touched on the idea of what horror movies are saying about what society is afraid of or is dealing with in any particular time. And I thought that was a really fascinating kind of thing. And we didn't get to talk about where we think we're going then. Like, what are things going to be depicted now that we're dealing with as a society that we are thinking could show up in horror movies in the near term? Disease? I mean, that's
well, like the zombie stuff, all the I feel like that will continue because obviously the last 2 years have been awful. So I feel like
it's interesting because there's been so many movies about like disease, like films like Contagion and 28 Days Later jump to mind pretty quick. But they've been looking at that. They're like, guys, this isn't like something that could happen. This is something that will happen.
And then Rain is an old one.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably see more of that. I think we're going to see more minimalist horror filmmaking as well. Especially if there's anything that's been in post-production during COVID, since you had such a limited amount of people that could be on set.
I feel like isolation is a thing.
Yeah, isolation will be a big thing.
Isolation. What if you're isolated and something is haunting your Zoom call? I wonder if there's going to be a film about something about like you keep getting these Zoom calls.
There was. I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of it, but it was so much better than had any right to be. I was like, it's like a bunch of girls that are trying to like get back in touch with someone they've lost, and the Zoom call gets dropped with a medium. And I know on paper that sounds so terrible, but the movie was so good. I was like, this is annoying. It's so good. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more of that too. It's just like, how are we going to tell a story through a medium that we all had to interact with and still interact with?
And I think it'll be popular because, most of us went through it anyways. So it is a very everyone will connect to it.
It'll be a common reference point for a lot of people, right? Yeah, that's what people are looking for in terms of big box office.
I think that there's going to be lots of invasion, or invasive storylines, because just with how rampant everything's been for the last couple of years. I think we'll probably see some. We might see some exorcism storylines or some haunted house stories, or just something where your space is disrupted.
Yeah.
Or where you are imprisoned by your own space.
Yeah. This might actually be harder to predict than we think, because I was thinking about the social, economic, political issues everybody's went through in the past couple of years. And of course, we can easily make parallels to how that could be made into a horror movie, and even a couple examples of how it has been made into horror movies. But I think about after 9/11 happened, I think if we were having a talk then about what horror movies were going to be going forward, we might have predicted that they would be more focused on mass surveillance and more focused on the fear of the other, fear of somebody from another country, something like that. And we kind of would have been wrong about it, because I'm thinking of movies from the 2000s, like horror movies, and I don't think of many movies that played on those types of fears.
There were a lot of the action.
There was Hostel.
Yeah. Hostel jumps to mind immediately. Signs jumps to mind immediately.
Oh, Signs. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there might have been some examples, but I don't know if it was enough to call it a trend. I don't know.
I would say that 9/11 obviously trending in action films, drama and things like that. So it may have
film.
influenced that genre.
Those movies came out way too
It
fast.
seems like horror was more the escapist genre of that time, and action was the social commentary of that.
Yeah, we in the early aughts, that was the boom of a lot of Asian horror getting American adaptations. So you had The Grudge and you had The Ring getting adapted. Yeah, there was a lot of like foreign adaptations that were coming in at that time too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. I have really enjoyed this. I'm gonna let everybody give your outro and let everybody know where to find you. I know we just had 2 shows wrap up, but there could be something else. Let everybody know where they can find you for the next thing. So, Megan, you want to?
Well, I'm at Megan Pecot, Pecot on Instagram. You can find me there. I'll be updating projects. Can't done anything yet, but once I sign some contracts, maybe by next week.
Dax?
Oh, me? Okay. I got nothing to promote right now. Just go watch The Cultist, man. It's awesome.
Watch The Cultist. Season 1 is here on this channel. If you haven't seen it, Season 1 is here, and then Season 2 is going to be coming soon with the release of Ritual. But Season 1, it's 10 episodes. Each episode is like between 4.5 and 7 minutes. 10 episodes long. You definitely watch those.
Marathon.
Rachel?
Yeah. I am on Chef Marshall on Instagram. You can find me taking very, very many power naps over the next week. There are a couple things coming down the pipeline soon, but for now it will probably be a little quiet, except for some really yummy food pictures.
I love them. It looks delicious.
And of course, if you want to check it out, and you should check it out, Cultist Season 1, and then like Keith said, we've got Season 2 and Ritual coming soon.
And Dinner and a Board Game, we play Hero Quest.
Yes.
Dax and Rachel and Megan were all on that. And that Season 2, Episode 1, it was kind of our new pilot, is also here on this channel. So check it out. There's a lot of stuff here on this channel. So if you're interested in fantasy and tabletop games, and this is the place you need to be. This is my main social media outlet. So I post here quite regularly in addition to the live shows that we do. So please like and subscribe. All right, everybody, we're out of here.
Bye, guys.